Hey guys, welcome to another episode of the World Football Summit podcast. I'm your host, Jaime, CMO at World Football Summit. This year, at WFS Europe, we are launching a new track focused specifically on understanding all the elements that maximize player performance. After all, at its core, the entire industry depends on healthy players being able to play at their highest level, right? Luckily, over recent years, we have gone from focusing only on the physical component to do so on realms like mental awareness, nutrition, and sleep, which is precisely the topic of today's conversation. It is simply amazing to see how much sleep influences not only athletic performance, but overall well-being in all of us. And today, we are lucky to welcome one of the biggest experts on the science of sleep, Dr. Meeta Singh, performance sleep medicine consultant, founder, and CEO at Performance Delta LLC. Dr. Singh is a board-certified physician and psychiatrist, concentrated in the applied science of sleep. She has a remarkable body of work across the entire sports industry, as she has been involved with organizations from the NFL, Major League Baseball, the NBA, the US Olympic team, and of course, football teams in Europe and Asia. This is a truly fascinating conversation where we talk all things sleep. We go from some generic aspects like circadian rhythms, the latest research around the science of sleep, and some of the factors that influence getting a better sleep, including nutrition, light, or napping. And of course, how all of this is then applied to the realm of player performance. So this is a conversation for all of you in the sports industry looking to enhance athletic performance. Whether you're a coach, performance director, executives looking to acquire and retain the best talent, or just even looking to make the best decisions for the sports business. Personally, I was honored to have this conversation with Dr. Singh because this is a topic that truly intrigues me, and I hope that you learned as much as I did. Not only for a professional setting, but also for your own personal life. The best thing is that Dr. Singh is a confirmed speaker for WFS Europe in Sevilla on September 28th and 29th, so you can expect to hear more insights from her on the live stage. If you haven't done so already, head over to our website and buy your ticket right now so you can join us either in person or virtually. Finally, feel free to leave your feedback or your comments on social media about this conversation. We really want to understand if you get value out of it. You know where to reach us: Twitter, LinkedIn, Instagram, or Facebook, wherever you want. Nothing else from my side. Thank you very much for joining, and with that, let's welcome Dr. Meeta Singh. So, Dr. Singh, welcome. Thank you very much for joining us. We have the opportunity to speak, and we're really looking forward to welcoming you to World Football Summit. I did want to ask, before we go into the details, and obviously you're going to teach our audience a lot about the importance of sleep. I guess not only in the realm of player performance, which is what we want to discuss here today, but I'm sure that people here are going to learn a lot for their own personal lives. So looking forward to that. But again, before going into the questions, I did want to ask if you can give us, and give the audience a brief history of your background and what your career has been up to date.
So my name is Dr. Meeta Singh, and I'm a sleep physician. So I'm a board-certified psychiatrist and a sleep medicine doctor. And I have experience and expertise working with athletes. So in the last many years, I've worked with professional sports leagues here in the United States. So I've worked with the NFL, the NHL, the NBA, as well as the Major League Baseball. I worked with the US Olympic teams as well as in college sports. And I've done some work for football in Europe as well as Asia too.
Oh, great. Well, I think we're going to get a lot of this conversation. When, the opportunity came up to speak with you, Dr. Singh, I was thinking, luckily, over recent years, there's been a lot more visibility around how far the realm of recovery has evolved, really. So it's really gotten to the point where actually it's more about if you're training for 1 or 2 hours, it's really more about what happens after those 1 or 2 hours, so the rest of the day in terms of nutrition, meditation. Is that Am I getting that correctly? Is that a perception that you've seen, or how have you seen it evolve?
Yes, I think that there really has been a revolution in the field of performance about what's important and what are the factors that can lead to optimizing performance. And I know that you mentioned it's all the things that we do after the play, but I would say that it's actually everything that you do leading up to the time when you're actually performing. So if you're going to be on the field and playing football for 2 hours, it's the 22 hours, what you did those 22 hours before. And sleep is an integral part of it. And we're now learning more and more. So the evidence, there is enough research that shows that sleep affects every aspect of performance and wellness, and even the way that athletes are mentally prepared to show up when they're playing. And now it's just a matter of applying what we know so that we can actually have players perform at their level best.
Mm-hmm. I guess, and this is kind of like, also I'm going to mix in a little bit of a personal question, because I just recently had a baby, and one of the things that the doctor tells us is how important it is to get the baby used to circadian rhythms. And why I'm asking this is a topic that I'm no expert on the matter whatsoever, but that's of vital importance, So how does, looking into the realm of sport, how does that circadian rhythm influence? Is that something, because you've worked with, a lot of teams from different sports, is that something that teams are starting to consider?
Yes. So let me start out with some background information for your audience. So circadian rhythms are these intrinsic, they're biological rhythms that we have, which, so every function in your body has a rhythm, and it's approximately 24 hours. And so for human beings, your main circadian clock is located in your brain, and it's typically synchronized to wherever you locally are, right? So if you're in Madrid, your circadian clock is synchronized to the local Madrid time. And so if you took an airplane and you flew to the East Coast in the US, your circadian rhythms would now be out of sync because of the new time zone. And they would cause all sort of problems, like you'd be sleepy, you may not be able to sleep at the local time, you'd be fatigued, you may be eating meals at the wrong time. So you're just not going to be your optimal self, right? So with that background, of course, now in sports, especially if you're an elite athlete, you compete, and the competition is now worldwide. There's not a single, people are not playing in their local areas. And the way that athletes work is that they get on a plane, they go to a new time zone, they get jet lag, but then they have to also still have to show up. Now, there's actually a lot of research that shows that your circadian rhythms can have a profound effect on how you perform. And teams that are really, really thinking about making sure that every aspect of performance is optimized, they would be thinking about jet lag. So the World Cup is coming up, right? And it's in Qatar.
Yeah.
And these teams are going from all over the world. And so one of the things that I and my company do is that we come in, we educate the players, and then we give, both information on a team-wide level as well as an individualized level, so that these athletes, when they show up to the new time zone, not only are they well rested, but also they're performing well. So they don't, you want to try and minimize the jet lag, but you also want to optimize the performance. It's like giving them the competitive edge.
And at their level, anything counts, no? So, at the end of the day, every detail counts. But I'm also thinking, because obviously when you look at, for example, when you go to the United States, there are obviously different time zones, and I can see the effect on there, no? But I'm also thinking, at least in Europe, when you play in the domestic leagues, at least, it's unusual to find teams traveling between different time zones. So, for example, if I'm in Madrid and I go to play to Barcelona, I'm going to be in the same time zone. But what could happen is there's a lot of late games here in Europe, especially in Spain. you have your 10 o'clock games, especially in countries where there's a lot of, hot weather. In the summer, they're putting, games at 10 o'clock at night or even 11. I've seen it, no? What happens to those people that, put it in an informal language, are more of a morning person? How do they prepare for that? Can you change your circadian rhythm? And then also, how do you cool down afterwards? Because obviously the body kind of is active, no? So you want to go to sleep, but you're active. So how do you cool down afterwards?
So Jamie, I have to tell you there are 3 or 4 questions in that one question. So I'm going to make sure that I answer every question that you ask.
Apologies, yeah.
So no, please don't apologize. So you're absolutely right. Your circadian rhythms, it's not jet lag is just one aspect in which the circadian rhythms have an effect on performance and, overall health. But one of the things that your circadian clock also decides is your chronotype, which is, in simple words, it's this genetic preference that people have to either be a morning person, so a morning lark, or a night owl. And you're right, most games, especially if the games are the top of the top, typically, and people want to see them on television, the best time for them to see it is if they occur at night. Mm-hmm. Right. So competitions, top level competitions happen at night. And what that means is that if you're a morning person, you might be at a disadvantage. Mm-hmm. And yes, there is absolute science-backed strategies which you can use to shift your circadian clock so it can align with the actual performance time, and that will help give you a competitive edge. And then the reverse is also true. So if you have in many sports you can have trial matches and those matches may be at different times during the day, and then eventually if you make it to the top level of the competition, you have nighttime competition. And there is a way to strategically prepare for that so that you can not only make sure you get enough sleep at night, but also align your circadian clock so you can maximize on that performance. Okay. So that's number one. The second question you asked is that these are such late night games, and how do athletes sort of cool down? And again, it's a great observation. So all the things that the athletes do while they're on the field, right, in which they're hyper alert, they're hyper focused, their body temperature is high, their adrenaline as well as testosterone, everything is high, and they want to have a little bit of aggression. They want to make sure they're very fast. All those things that actually make you a very good player on the field are also the reasons that will make it more difficult for you to wind down and fall asleep at night.
Wow.
And so that's the other thing. That's the other place where I have expertise in, and where I work with individual athletes, etc., to help them develop these and practice these winding down schedules that actually help them fall asleep at night and stay asleep, and also develop a realistic expectation of what sleep is going to look like after such a significant high tension, high energy sort of competition.
Okay. Well, super interesting. And this is actually a perfect segue into the next part of the conversation, where I want to ask about some factors that influence sleep, no? Mm-hmm. You were mentioning jet lag. And a few years ago, I read on one of Tim Ferriss's books that one of the secrets behind overcoming jet lag is that when you get to a different time zone, you actually go into the gym, as much as you might dread it, go into the gym and do 15 minutes of very light cardio even. And that's going to help solve. So I kind of read that and I said, is that really true? So I really did want to ask you if that's true or not.
Well, so I think, again, going back to the basic science and understanding that is going to help us develop strategies of how to deal with jet lag. So that circadian clock that is in your brain, it's most significantly influenced by light exposure,
Okay.
by exercise, as well as food timing, as well as the amount of sleep you're getting, etc., or how you're getting your sleep. So we know that, for example, if you were going to travel west and you were going to if you were going to fly to the United States, you would want to be exposed to bright light in the evening because that would help you go to bed later. It would also, you'd want to exercise closer at night because that would also help shift your clock. And you'd want to shift your meal timings because that's going to help with the jet lag and vice versa. So the short answer is that when you're helping people with jet lag, it's a combination of light exposure or avoidance. It's exercise, timely exercise, as well as avoiding exercise, and meals and what you're eating. And it's all about timing. And the timing is dependent on the person's individual circadian clock, as well as the direction of travel. And so, in a short answer is yes, exercise would help, but it has to be done taking into consideration all these other factors, because that's what makes it actually happen. So exercise at the wrong time would actually make it worse.
Okay.
So there is that can also happen. But yes, you want exercise, light exercise, and what you're eating is really, really essential, but it all depends on timing.
This is fantastic because I had written down, I wanted to ask about a lot of those factors that you just mentioned. So this is going to be great. But first though, I know that usually the recommendation that you hear is that people need to get 6-8 hours of sleep, ideally. It more depends on the person, I would assume. But it is true that, things happen in life. No, so I'm talking about a personal perspective now. I just had a baby. I wish I could get that, those hours in. So is quality of sleep, can it overcome quantity of sleep?
Okay, so again, let me start off by saying, so the American Academy of Sleep Medicine, the recommendation is that an average adult needs between 7 to 9 hours of sleep.
Okay.
Function well.
Okay. Thanks for that.
And if you're getting less than 6 hours, you're likely to have detrimental effects from lack of sleep. And the worst thing about that is that you yourself are not going to be aware of those detriments. So objectively, you will have detriments. So you become slower, you become inaccurate, you may have, issues with mental health, etc. But your ability to tell whether you're impaired, goes down. So it's like drinking alcohol. When you drink alcohol, you yourself are not a good judge of how impaired you are. So that's number one. The second thing is that when you think about sleep, you want to think about sleep in 3 large categories. And we talked about one of them. So you want to think about the quantity of sleep. On an average, you want to get 7 to 9 hours of sleep. Number 2 is the quality of sleep, which is that when you're in bed, you want to make sure that you spend most of the time sleeping, so you get good quality sleep, and you get a good amount of the different stages of sleep. And then the third thing is the timing of sleep. Again, we talked a little bit about it when we talked about the circadian rhythms, right? If you're a night owl, you'd be best if you slept in accordance to your circadian clock, right? And if you're a morning person, it would be best if you aligned your sleep according to that. And then also you wanted to be regular with your sleep. You don't want to, sleep like teenagers do, in which, during school days, they go to bed from, say, midnight and they have to wake up at 6. And then on the weekend, they go to bed at 3 in the morning and sleep until about noon or 1 o'clock. That irregularity is really bad. So the simple answer is the most, quality of sleep is really good. But if you were regularly getting 5 hours of sleep, so if you were regularly depriving yourself from getting enough sleep, the quality doesn't really matter, right? So it's like calories. So you need a certain amount of calories to sustain life. If on a regular basis, you were on starvation diet, but if you were taking only 500 calories per day and you were eating the best quality food, it wouldn't matter.
It wouldn't matter.
You really would need to make sure you get enough calories in to sustain life.
Okay. I guess I'm thinking, you were mentioning some of the conditions for sleep, no? And I guess one of the, even though he's not a football player per se, you look at an athlete like LeBron James and you see the longevity of his career and how he's been able to be at the peak for his entire career. I once heard an interview where he was mentioning some of those conditions. So he gets 8 or 9 hours of sleep. He has the room completely dark, the room temperature. He turns off electronics. So are there, other than these, any particular guidelines that you recommend all the athletes that you work with or the teams that you work with that they should follow to get a good night's sleep?
Yes. So first of all, what you just described is just things that normally everybody, including athletes, should do. You want your bedroom to be cold, dark, and quiet. You want it to be electronic free, not just because of the light that comes from it, but the electronics are interactive, right? And so once you get on social media, it's sort of difficult to disengage from it and make time for sleep. It's also, the electronic, social media and working and playing on electronics, people say that it's relaxing and it's actually more distracting than relaxing. So it's a distraction. It prevents you from thinking about that day, but doesn't really relax you to prepare you for sleep at night. And so I would say apart from those normal things, some of the things that you can do is even the three main things. Number one is reduction of light exposure at night. Not having, say, for example, the television on, not being on electronics, etc. That will help. Number two is reducing the amount of caffeine you drink. So, and that's really, really relevant to players because if you're going to be competing, if your kickoff is at 8 o'clock at night, most of them will drink a couple of energy drinks because they want that energy, which means that half of that, the caffeine is still in their system when they're trying to fall asleep, and that may make it difficult. You want to reduce the amount of alcohol because alcohol will disrupt your sleep later at night. You want to develop a good winding down schedule, something that's quiet and relaxing, electronic free. If people have spiritual practices, that's a good time to do it. Meditation, etc. All of that. You want to create the right circumstances so that sleep can happen. You can't really command sleep to happen, right? You can't force yourself to fall asleep. But if you give it the right circumstances, you're likely to fall asleep.
It's actually great because that was actually going to be one of my questions in terms of caffeine and routines and also the big myth there is the alcohol consumption. I know here in Spain, there's a lot of tradition to actually have your red wine before going to bed. In terms of caffeine, I've read it's 10 to 12 hours before actually going to bed. So that's a lot.
Let's take a minute to just talk about caffeine because I think people are really, especially athletes, are really interested in it.
Yep.
Especially because there's actually research that athletes don't even realize how much caffeine there is in different things. They don't look at it, they think of this something as an energy drink, or they think of something as a workout drink that they want to drink before the game, or they may be drinking something in the middle of the game, and then they may think of it as a post-workout drink, not realizing that it has caffeine in it. And what caffeine does is it goes and it attaches to that part of the brain that is responsible for sleepiness, so it blocks the effect of sleepiness.
Okay.
Half-life is about 5 to 6 hours, which means that if you drink a cup of coffee at 7 o'clock at night, or caffeine in any form, half of it is still in your system 5 or 6 hours later. And then, a quarter of it is still in your system again sometime later. And then, of course, it's kind of complicated because some people are fast metabolizers, which means that they rapidly remove the caffeine from their systems. Others are slow. So again, it's an individualized approach, and you have to kind of figure out how it fits into whether it allows you to to fall asleep or not. Because you want to be, when you're on the field, you want to have maximum energy. But then when you get back to your home or your hotel room, you want to make sure you fall asleep too.
And yeah, thanks for that, because I think that's actually one of the things that people, especially athletes, are not aware. And you're totally right. They start to think these drinks or these whatever they're having is just a post-workout meal. What other, routines or tricks you would recommend? No? For example, I recently heard one that could be very well applied to athletes is stretching before bed. So I don't know if there's other routines or if that's a good routine to adopt, because I assume not only from a physical perspective, stretching also kind of helps you mentally kind of, start to cool down, no?
Right. I mean, I think I would say, the reason why you need a good mental a winding down schedule is because people are on the go a lot. And I always give this analogy that if there's a plane flying and it wants to land, it doesn't just, flop from the ground. It does all these maneuvers and then slowly lands. And to think about winding down as the same sort of maneuvers that you do that, again, allow sleep to happen. And, maybe a hot bath, stretching exercises. Sometimes people do progressive muscle relaxation. You can read a book. Mm-hmm. You can do meditation. Sometimes yoga, is a good idea. Another way to think about it, Jamie, would be to say, think about all the things that actually stimulate you and prevent doing that.
Okay.
Right. So if you're going to be if your bedtime is, let's say 11 p.m., 10 o'clock at night is not a good time to do a boxing workout.
Okay. Makes sense.
It's not going to allow you to relax and go to sleep. So yeah, that's those are the things that would work for you.
And you also mentioned nutrition before.
Yes.
And I wanted to go back because I think that's also a big one, especially for athletes, because they're always obviously looking to take care of their nutrition. Is it true that it's best to eat dinner around 3 to 5 hours before going to sleep? Is there any time frame they should consider?
Well, so, generally the recommendation is that you don't eat within 3 to 4 hours of going to bed. But you have to, again, you have to really, working with athletes, you have to kind of tailor that, because, suppose they come off the game, they want to eat a large meal, and then perhaps they need a couple of snacks, because sometimes athletes, they use up so many calories, and you don't want hunger to wake them up.
Yeah.
Once they go to bed, right? So perhaps some sort of snack which is light, nuts, or definitely not a chocolate bar, because that contains caffeine and other things. So yes, so again, they're different recommendations. You want to have, typically for sleep, they say you want to eat something that has complex carbs that might help you fall asleep at night.
Okay.
So again, it would be very individualized.
Okay, I understand. And being from Spain, I have to ask you about napping, because it's a big topic, at least here, and I would assume in the general sports world. No, and there's a famous footballer, Gerard Piqué, and he was interviewed once before the World Cup final in 2010. So this was kind of like the biggest game of his career, and he said that he had a wonderful nap. But I'm thinking, does napping then affect sleep at night? Well,
so. We can definitely talk about that. I would say the way I would think about napping is, let me give your audience a story. So in the 1970s and 80s, when astronauts from NASA would go into space, they would have really irregular schedules. Plus, there's 16 sunrises and sunsets in a 24-hour period, and so they'd be tired, and they asked sleep scientists what they should do, and they said, well, the best thing you can do is take a nap. Mm-hmm. Because when you don't get enough sleep at night, one way to take a bite out of your sleep drive and to increase energy is by napping. Mm-hmm. And that is it's a really good strategy for almost all athletes.
Okay.
The key to napping is the timing. So how long the nap is, when the nap is, and how close it is to the actual game time.
Okay.
So I would say, so there are three kind of naps. There's a power nap, which is 15 to 25 minutes. Mm-hmm. There's, a 30-minute nap will have a little bit deeper sleep, but it's still light sleep.
Mm-hmm.
And then there's a entire sleep cycle, which is approximately 90 minutes or so, which is what NBA players here or NHL players do, in which they take a nice large nap in the mid-afternoon before their actual game time. So there's the length of the nap. Then you don't want to nap. You want to wake up within, the best time to nap, of course, is in the mid-afternoon when
Mm-hmm.
you are anyways tired. And the third thing is you don't want to nap within 2 hours of the actual game time because you don't want to be groggy up for the actual competition.
Okay.
And you're right. In some people, when they have issues with sleeping at night, the recommendation is not take a nap.
Okay.
And so that, again, like I said, because sleep science it's an actual field of science. Sometimes when people read off the internet that, this kind of nap is good, etc., that's all very, that's good, perhaps good information. But again, unless it's individualized, it really does. You can't really apply it yourself. And the players or the athletes or the teams that I work with, when they're at that elite level, everything is individual, right? Their workout is individualized. Their nutrition is individualized.
Okay.
Their sleep is individualized, as well as the game plan.
Okay. Well, okay. Thanks for that. I think before moving on to the next section of the conversation, I think obviously we're talking in a relaxed environment here, but the truth is that these athletes, they deal with a lot of pressure, which I would assume that's also a factor that you can have a lot of routines, but at the end of the day, if you're under that, let's say, pressure to perform, to win, to always be at your best, I would assume that impacts the quality of sleep. So how does an athlete, let's say, fight against that?
Well, so you're absolutely right. So athletes, just by their personalities, because sometimes they're type A, they're slightly anxious, they're very focused, that makes it more difficult for them to relax. Number two is that they have a lot of pressures on them.
Mm-hmm.
It's not just an internal pressure to perform. Their coaches, their audience, their fans, their agents,
mm-hmm.
their family members, they have all these pressures of performance, and that might make it more difficult for them to relax. And so the fact that athletes are set up for poor sleep is really, really well known. So this is well researched. There's data out there that says that, different sports, especially, some of the sports are worse than others. But in addition to that, so with my training, so I'm a psychiatrist and a sleep medicine specialist. And the focus of our company is that when I work with an athlete or when we work with teams, our focus is mental strength as well as taking care of their sleep, because they really go hand in hand.
Mm-hmm.
One cannot exist without the other. So if you've ever had a poor night of sleep because you've had issues with, some sort of stress, stress can really affect sleep. And then, of course, it's a bidirectional effect. So if you have poor sleep, then that makes it more difficult for you to cope with the stresses of the next day. And it makes it more difficult to cope with, especially the high pressure in the elite sport world. And it's a vicious cycle. And oftentimes the best way to address it is by addressing the sleep part and the mental health part.
This is actually, I think, a great way to enter the next section, because I want the audience to really get a lot out of your experience so far, both in terms of, the span of your career, and also because you've worked with, top tier or sport brands around the world, no? So I want to ask, is there any best in class examples that you can think of either teams or players who are working best around the concept of sleep to optimize for player performance?
Oh, yes. Right. So in the, in almost every major league, if you look at, I have to tell you that if you look at top performers, they will tell you that optimizing sleep is their superpower. I mean, you took LeBron James, Tom Brady says that, Usain Bolt says that. I know Rafael Nadal said that. And, I mean, I'm not going to be able to name all the names, but when I can tell you from my work, I worked with the Major League Baseball team, the Washington Nationals.
Okay.
And during that year, when I was working with them and their whole, I worked as their sleep consultant, and we wanted to optimize sleep, especially because of the travel, and they won the World Series. And that was the first time in the history that they actually won the World Series.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
So yes, so I would tell you that it's the research clearly shows that poor sleep, because of either irregular schedules or mental pressures, is a part of the athletes. It's something that happens to most athletes, happens to most teams. So optimizing that is what makes things much better, that optimizes performance. So I would say that if you looked at top performers in the world in the field of sports, I would think that optimizing sleep would be part of what they do.
Which goes back to what we were mentioning at the beginning of the conversation. No? And I guess I want to ask, are there any, let's say, best practices or recommendations that you give based on those examples? Maybe not the ones you just mentioned, but pretty much out of your experience. Mm-hmm. Any quick guidelines that you would give, to the audience?
Well, I think I'd like to take a minute to explain what the scientific community has come up with of how to approach sleep for an athlete. And it really is it's a well researched way of doing so, in which it starts always with education and talking to the athlete as well as the entire team, because oftentimes this is not even on their radar. Mm-hmm. Right? So you want to do that, and then you want to do some assessments and use, again, clinically validated tools that are developed to identify issues in athletes, and then apply programs in which, the athletes, not only are you taking care of the sleep need and help with the schedules for the team-wide level, but also for individual athletes. Mm-hmm. And you want to make sure that if somebody individually has a problem, you definitely want to address that. Okay. And then this has to be done on a regular basis. If it's a 6-month season, you want to start out during the training camp or the preseason, but then you want to address it on a regular basis so that nobody falls through the cracks, especially for winning teams, because as the season progresses, the competition becomes more and more significant, and you want to go to the postseason where you can, enter and be get to the ultimate level. And I would say sleep is like gives that competitive edge.
And you were mentioning that, and I agree. I think this is something that's changing pretty much with new research, no?
Yeah.
By the minute. So yeah. I guess I want to ask, well, first question, are there any resources that you recommend the audience to go check out so they can be up to date?
So, for people who are interested in learning about sleep, this is something that I do. I have a website. It's meetasinghmd.com. We regularly post on the social media. In addition to that, there is the National Sleep Foundation, which is it's based out of the US, and there is some information that is present there. So I am on all social media as Meeta Singh MD. Mm-hmm. That would be a source of information. I have plenty of interviews and talks on YouTube for people to be able to get access to that information. And I think it's important to understand that it's not just the athletes, it's also the coaches who are, have a stake in the winning and optimizing their sleep, because making sure that you get enough sleep influences decision making, the ability to come up with novel plays, etc. So to think of outside the box, all of that is something that happens with good sleep.
Okay, we'll definitely send the audience over to check all the resources that you have, and And, it is totally true that all those interviews that you've done in the past are very valuable. I highly recommend the audience to listen to them. I've listened to them just to prepare for this conversation. So that's a big recommendation there. I guess also, is there any, on the other, let's say, going to the other side of the coin, no? Are there any bad recommendations that you feel? Recommendations that you hear that are out there that are not true, or that they're not. I don't know if there's anything there. Maybe there is. But.
So for people who have, Jamie, for people who have sleep issues, and I would say a lot of athletes do, the general recommendation that you find on Google, which is like, whole dark room, quiet, don't play electronics, those are not enough.
Okay.
So these recommendations, which are, they're in the sleep science field, they're called good sleep hygiene. So these are all the things that you can do to make your sleep, area comfortable, etc. Typically, if you were doing a clinical study in which you were testing or you were looking at if a sleep intervention is effective, you would use these sleep hygiene as placebo.
Okay.
Because, they're essential for good sleep, but they're not interventions. Okay. So I would tell you that if people are actually having a sleep issue, then what you need to do is you want to go to somebody and you want to make sure that you understand the qualifications of the expertise that you're seeking.
Makes sense.
Otherwise, you're going to, so sleep, and there is a role for sleep coaching for sure. I mean, there are sleep coaches who can sort of, if they're working under, and if they've been certified in sleep, might be able to help you with some, getting some answers. But they would not be able to help elite athletes or elite teams if they had genuine questions, because that would require expertise and a background knowledge about that subject matter.
Okay. Yeah, well, thank you for that, because I mean, that's very valuable, I think, for anybody listening. I did want to ask you, is there any groundbreaking research that you're looking into that's caught your attention as of late?
Well, I'll tell you what I think. The science about circadian rhythms, mm-hmm. which are these biological rhythms that everybody has, is going to transform healthcare and the way that people take care of themselves in the future. And it's already here, right? So everything is going to be individualized, mm-hmm. and performance and the health of elite athletes is going to fall under that purview. Mm-hmm. And that I think is the big frontier in sports performance and athlete health.
Mm-hmm. Fantastic. Dr. Singh, this has been a great conversation. I just have 2 more questions. Mm-hmm. I want to thank you for your time before asking those 2 questions. And I'm not sure if there's anything else you want to say. If not, we can just move on to these final 2 questions.
I think we can ask for 2 questions, and then we can circle back if Kent has any.
Sure. I just want to ask you first, looking over to World Football Summit, and again, we're really excited to have you because I think all your expertise is going to be very valuable. As I said, we are launching this new track on player performance, and we really, really appreciate you being there. So, from your point of view, what is the value that you believe that in-person events like World Football Summit bring to the table?
Well, I think the importance of an in-person event in this case is the fact that you're bringing all these important stakeholders who have one goal, and that goal is they want to improve football because they love the game. Mm-hmm. And I think that when you bring a lot of people to the table and they all have one goal, then that's where innovative ideas happen, right? You come to know about new things. Your goal is you come to know new things, and improving the game happens at different levels based on the different fields that these different participants come from.
Couldn't agree more. At the end of the day, you learn new things, you meet new people, you meet new businesses, new technologies. I mean, I think you accelerate all of that, no?
Yeah.
Final question. I don't want to take more of your time, Dr. Singh. What are your expectations for World Football Summit?
So I will say that my expectation is, number one, is to have the important stakeholders in the world of football to start thinking about sleep and recovery and to prioritize it. I think that's number one. Number two is that you guys have a football. It's an international sport. People travel. The stakes are really high, especially at the top level. I would like to work with the top level people because I believe I'm the best in the business.
Nice. Well, thank you. We like to have our expectations high, and we really hope, we can deliver against those expectations. Dr. Singh, again, this has been great. I'm sure the audience is going to get a lot out of this, and they're going to be willing to learn much more from you during the event. We can't wait to see you there. And thank you so much for being with us today.
Well, thank you for having me, Jay. I'm looking forward to the actual event.
Thank you. And there you have her, Dr. Meeta Singh. Just in case you didn't catch it at the beginning of the episode, she's a performance sleep medicine consultant, founder, and CEO at Performance Delta LLC. I believe that her work speaks for herself, and as well as the amount of information and advice she shared with us today. I hope you enjoyed this conversation and learned more about how crucial sleep is, not only to compete better, but overall to live better. And if you're in a role related to optimizing player performance, then you can do your job even better from now on. Once again, feel free to reach out across social media and let us know your feedback. Nothing else from my side. We look forward to seeing you on the next episode of World Football Summit podcast, and of course, in the upcoming WFS Europe in Sevilla on September 28th and 29th. Until next time, have a great rest of your day.